A day. She told her brother, harshly. Not even a day, and you cause this. You are the one allowing yourself to be separated and marry this bastard I kneel. But Osrith was already approaching the king. Constantine, tell me this is not so. Prince Domnall has offered to wed you out of respect, came a voice beside Constantine. Eswe, Osrith noticed. Eswe, after everything. What does she say? Constantine now addressed his cousin. I have yet to ask her, Domnall admitted. Osrith had turned to Finan, but it was Eswe who spoke. You are to return to Berwick, and the king acknowledges your loyalty to the people of your land. Eswe went on. What it comes down to which law you accept, in Glalandish or Alba? And Osrith knew Constantine had outsmarted even her. Because, if she accepted it was in Glalandish, it put her directly in line with Aethelstan, opposing him. And Constantine knew Osrith could not admit that, even if it were not the truth. As I was wed in Alba, I can only accept Alba law, Osrith told them. So you accept that the warrior Finan has rejected you? Eswe sought to confirm. Osrith looked to Domnall, who looked at her, impassively. I overheard what that bare asked Gale was saying, Utad put in. Oh yes, since when do you speak Gaelish? Osrith demanded to know, her anger flowing to the man who had wronged her the most, although between all of them surrounding her, he had competition. I was having help with the translation, Utad told her. He said that he thought that as Finan had sent you to Alba, he had repudiated you. What? Osrith looked to Finan, pushed you to one side, claimed your lands and rejected you. I did no such thing. Finan found his voice at last, and Osrith looked to him. And she knew it there and then that Finan had had no part in any of this, other than being trapped within whatever plan Constantine had constructed. Domnall, prince of wherever, is going to ask Constantine permission to marry you, that you may stay here, in Alba, with Ildub. Ildub, Osrith repeated. Your son, Utad told her, although there was no need, for Osrith knew what he meant. One big Gaelish family, he went on, circling towards Domnall. He can't wait to hump her. But before the accusation of Domnall's intentions could be unpicked, Osrith turned to face her former lover. Ildub, she demanded, remembering Edra's assertion that Constantine had begun to call young Finan by his dead firstborn son's name. I have made the agreement, Constantine told her. Ildub is to accompany Aethelstan back to Wessex, as his guest. No, Osrit, Domnall told her as she made to round on Constantine. It is all arranged. And it was Domnall, out of all of them, who told her that Aethelstan had stood godfather to young Finan, as Ildub at Bridge, in the Roman Christian faith, and he was now to go back to Winchester as hostage. No, no, it cannot be, Osrith declared. But it is, Domnall told her, Utad exchanging a look with Finan as he calmed her. It has secured Alba, and your son is safe, because by being acknowledged as such, Aethelstan will never again accept he is a challenge to the throne. As the words began to seep into Osrith's mind, she looked between Domnall and Constantine. I am going back to Berwick, she told Constantine, catching the eye of each of them. To the land I promised Sainid I would care for. And as to whether it is Alba or Inglaland, it is neither. Tell your king that, Utad, she added. He is not my king, Utad retorted, but Osrith had not finished. My land is Bernicia, Gododine to my people. It is neutral, and I will not fight. Men of Alba, men of Inglaland may not linger, lest they be thought of as hostile. She looked to Finan. Whether or not you decide my marriage is over, Constantine, this is the man I love, and would have beside me. She looked to Finan. Thanduinagam Thabinagad Thajailagam. Finan replied. No, Constantine told her, as Domnall stepped beside her. I decree you are already married to Domnall. He turned to Finan. Your actions confirmed it. Osrith was running, or at least her head was running. Her arms had been caught, however, by Utad, who anticipated the kick that she was about to land. Finan drew his sword as Utad held Osrith, struggling, at arm's length. Has this bastard humped you? He demanded of Osrith. He has not. Osrith replied, Eswe staring at her, and then Utad's sword. But you wish to hump my sister? Domnall looked first to Constantine and then at Finan, before back to Utad. Under this marriage, it is forbidden the repudiated woman will remain chaste whilst married to their nobleman who has taken her for his wife. He looked to Finan. It was you who suggested she come to Dunnottar, you who arranged for her to come here if you remember. I have not sent her away, I have not repudiated her. Finan told Domnall angrily. A swish of a sword came beside Domnall. Eswi was defending Constantine's position. But Domnall looked to Osrith now. Osrith, is this true? I believed it was a course of action that you wanted. You told me about his rejection. Domnall told her, looking a little apologetic but also righteous. I wished to prevent you from Gormlith's fate, a fate you began. Finan you I can chopper, he added, his final words heavy with latent truth. No, Domnall, Osrith said, words forming in her mind that would be suitable for him to hear. I do not accept that Finan rejected me. I do accept my brother put him in a difficult situation and he sought your help. It was not rejection, it was protection. My word is law, Constantine told her, which in Brehon law was literally true. You are wed to my kin, and reunite Beric with Alba, just as your son hostage Ethelstan. Finan, I am your wife, I will always be your wife. Do you accept this? She said them in Gaelish, the same words as he had said to Utad not 12 hours before. A clash of swords, Domnall's against Finan sealed the agreement. And then, whether Utad loosed his grip, or Osrith had taken the advantage, she slipped under his arm, taking his Sikhs with him. The look on his face was one of indignation, but Osrith held it out in front of her, not knowing then that this would be the last time but one that she would see Dunnottar. I will see you at home, Finan Moore, she told him and turned to the doorway. But there were men in the way, Alba warriors, who knew her, who had learned to fight under her, and behind them, Hywel's red-liveried Cymric, with West Saxons and Mersons beside them. But as she made to go, it was telling that none of them took much action to prevent her from leaving. Neither did Constantine. Later, Osrith considered, of the 3 celebrations she had attended, Tara, Dund, and now here at Dunnottar, they had all ended in a fight. Utad seized her shoulder. But Osrith was too quick, she had slipped under Utad's arm, and was away, through the chapel, tossing Utad his Sikhs. Up, and over the top of the chapel, and onto the stable roof she went, the bright, warm evening disguising her flight, for there was much merriment outside, with drink and food flowing making for mingling and reluctance to move, for there were some Mormers in pursuit. When she got to the end of the stables, she noticed a window open, and swung herself in. But it would be no good trying to take the horse she had prepared, too many men were outside in the courtyard, and she could hear the shouts of the men approaching. Osrith breathed, her heart hammering, her thoughts swimming. Constantine had married her to Domnall, under some law. She was sure it wasn't lawful in the eyes of the church. That was what she wanted to find out. Who better to know than Finoli? But then there was young Finan, who had been declared to be Ildub. How hadn't she known he had been rebaptized? She was his mother. How dare they all? Osrith could at least fight. Then, when she found tagged Sikhs, and Buey, and she crossed to the corner of the stables, where she had hidden her weapons under the hay. Who's there? Came a voice behind her, and a familiar shrmm of metal came through the air. Osrith turned, slowly, Buey's scabbard in hand, other hand on hilt. Osrith, as she threatened her attackers with her own blade, she realized, after a second, she was looking into a face she knew. 5 faces she knew. They relaxed their stance, although Miral took in her appearance and presence of bladed weapons. I need to go, please. Miral. Elfkin. Can you stage a diversion? And they were all there, beside her, Oshir, Falkbald, Eglfrith too, grinning at their former captain. You need to get out of that dress, Elfkin told her. You cannot ride a horse in that. And Osrith, with her Merson men beside her, discarded her dress that she had been made to wear, so she stood in her undershirt and breeches. It pooled to straw and she stepped out of it, kicking it away angrily. And then, they all did something extraordinary. Elfkin began, taking off his jerkin and then his overshirt, pulling it over Osrith's head. Eglfrith followed, with his sword belt until all of her men had given her something. She could leave now, go to Beric, see her people. Let them decide if what she had said to Constantine was what they would stand by. Ogier saddled her a horse, a black mare, and helped her onto it as a banging came to the door. As she got there, however, Osrith found that her way was blocked by Miral. I am going, Osrith told her former commander. You must accept. I am not disputing whatever is causing you to flee from a fortress for the 1000th time in your life, but not on this horse. He turned to the mercenary warriors. Ogier, you are the slightest. He handed him Osrith's discarded dress. You create a diversion. Osrith, with me, and I will have you a horse down by the river. He smiled. No warrior forgets a captain that gives them a second set of clothes. Osrith did not notice whether her men tittered as Ogier climbed into her dress and was helped, with mock ceremony, into the saddle. She strapped Bue's scabbard to her hip and tagged Seeks to the other, blending in the with Englarland warriors who had been set to find her. She never did see Ogier again, or Eglfrith or Falkbald, or even Ethelkin, who had been once a boy terrified of the night, now a grown man, and their leader. Young Finan is to come to Athelistan, she told Miral, before he saw her off. She was to ride via Stirling to give her more of a chance to avoid whichever warriors were in pursuit of Ogier in her dress. Of all commandments, it would seem. I will do all I can, Miral told her. And, before he turned, he pulled Osrith close to him, her friend as a child, from so long ago. If only Lord Oda would see us now, would see you, warrior Osrith, landowner, respected by everyone in the land. Lord Oda, was all Osrith could manage to the man's shoulder, before turning her face south. A lifetime of sword and battle, and not of her choosing. She had not been prepared to see her men, and now, as night fell, tears streamed from her eyes, for everything. Constantine would not let what he had decreed go. He would not let her remain at Beric, she knew that. But he also had his work cut out securing his alliances to defend his territories from Athelistan, and she might be left alone. One thing she knew, she was not married to Domnall, she was not his wife, he was not her husband. When she saw him next, Osrith was determined she put it right between them. Because she was his dearest friend, and because she was his, Osrith reasoned, he had been moved to make the gesture too. Battle lines were hardening and Osrith refused to take sides. 88,888,888. Her tears had dried when Osrith opened her eyes, having tethered her horse to a tree and had closed her eyes, Falkbald's cloak about her, in a cave in a sheltered cliff. The morning had been as glorious as the one she had seen the morning before. Then, she had been preparing for battle. Would she have believed herself if she had told herself she would be fleeing Dunnottar? Monks from Lindisfarne had hidden the body of Cuthbert in a cave such as this when they had fled the Danes, Osrith remembered, as she washed in a cold stream. This was her land, and when she returned to Beric she would first establish what was going on. Establish whether they still accepted her as their lady. If they did, she would then treat with Uhtred, to see whether there was any merit in the hope she had in her heart that they would work together to remain independent. And yet, her heart melted to Domnall. For everything, this proud man of the Uyneel family, once throne-worthy, once with a claim to the high kingship of all Irian, was prepared to wed Osrith to prevent her from dishonor and give up everything forever that was his family. He had sworn to do this when she and Finan married. How could she scorn such a faithful gesture? And, according to Constantine, that had already happened by his word. Osrith was Domnall's wife, Beric was Alba, and Osrith returning back to the land was a mere underline of the point. These thoughts remained in her head, refining and reforming themselves in her head as she headed south. Melrose appeared in her view and she would get herself and her horse some food there, with the silver piece that Miral had slipped into her hand before she left. But not now, not yet. For a lone rider was approaching her. Wearily, Osrith slipped from her saddle. She would make a stand. A stand. It was Finan. He had managed to find her, to follow her. Osrith waited for him to come to her, waited for him to tell her that he was going to Uhtred, and that it was too much, too complicated to remain with her. Do you think there is anywhere on earth I cannot come after you? Finan told her. I'm going to Beric, she told him. determinedly. "I'm coming with you then," he told her. The kiss lasted for as long as time itself, or at least to Osrith it felt that way. There was her and him, Osrith and Finan, no one else. "I am bound to Constantine," Osrith told him, "as you are bound to Uhtred." The Morrigan had spoken, her weak influence still felt by Osrith in her bones, in her heart, in her head. "As long as I am in Alba." She saw his expression change. Had Finan really been concerned she would do as Constantine wanted? Why not? Part of her felt that obligation. Then, never return to Alba? Go anywhere. Be anywhere. His voice was hopeful. And the Morrigan overtook Osrith's thoughts as she added to herself, "I'd be in Bibbenberg with Uhtred if it meant being with you." A breeze caught up around them. "And this marriage?" Osrith told him. "As far as I am concerned," Finan told her and put out his hands, taking hers. "Thabinagam Thadu Inagad. Thadu Inagam Thabinagad," Osrith told him. "And I would be with you, Finan Moore, only you." Tagged crossed her mind then. How similar that morning was to when that tall, fair-haired Gaelish warrior had taken her hands and said the hand-wed words. As far as she was concerned, Finan and she were married for the rest of their lives. "I will come back to Berwick with you," Finan told her, "for you are wrong about Uhtred. He gave me a purpose when I had none. I am not bound, but I do serve him." He kissed her again. "I would be with you for as long as you tell me otherwise." They walked to the monastery, both leading their horses, Finan stabling them, Osrith asking about food. "We have some." Despite having to cater for a whole army heading north, the abbot told them. "Are you part of the army? Are they returning?" "They will," Osrith told him. "But we are not them. I am returning to my lands in Berwick." A look of recognition crossed the abbot's face. "Lady Osrith." "Oh, but you may not remember me. I am Abbot Beorl. I came to your hall at harvest to offer worship to your tenants." He glanced to the stable. Osrith nodded. She was tired, she was still from having slept outside, but she told the abbot she did remember. "I am trying to return to my lands, away from the conflict in the north. The army you saw was of Aethelstan, king of the Angles and Saxons, demanding Constantine bend the knee and accept subservitude." Osrith watched as the abbot looked to the stables, Finan approaching them. "My husband, the Lord of Berwick," Osrith told the abbot. "My man, you are both welcome here," the abbot told them. "And should the army return, you will be safe here, we can assure it." He dipped his head to Osrith. "Your land is a precious commodity. Your people live in peace. Since the Danes and Norse do not incur, they deserve to have you back. No army will find you here." That evening, and in each other's arms, Finan kissed Osrith's neck. If she was married to Domhnall now, she had cheated on him 3 times. But, of course she was not married. Osrith had never even said yes or had been informed of the law, by Constantine or anyone else, and she hated that such a frivolous thought had passed over her mind, unworthy as it was of Domhnall's unfailing friendship. "I fear for our son," Osrith told Finan. "Where in Wessex, or Mercia, will he be sent?" Finan kissed her head, and shuffled her up into his arms. "Uhtred has negotiated with Aethelstan that he returns to his service," he said, close to her ear. Osrith turned round, to look at Finan. "Then you will come to be with me, stay at Berwick, on our land," Osrith told him. "But I know you cannot stay, just as I cannot forget the people in Alba who are dear to me." "Nor can Uhtred," Finan told her. "He saw, as well as I saw, those 2 children." "And I will be staying with ye, Osrith," he told her, "for you are more dear to me than anything in the world, and your brother knows it." So Osrith went on to tell him her hope, that Uhtred may consider Bernicia, and they could live together untroubled. And they went on to Berwick, on Osrith's dream, untroubled and unperturbed, and Osrith was welcomed back by her people, as their lady. 88,888,888 Constantine accompanied Aethelstan on his return south to ensure that he left his kingdom. It was a week later and Osrith saw the armies, one behind the other. Apart from them pausing on the road that took them to Ad Jeffrin, neither Alba nor Englaland came to the Lord and Lady of Bibbenberg.